Callum stood frozen on his front porch, his coffee cup shaking in his hand. Black SUVs blocked his street, men in uniform surrounded his tiny cottage, and a helicopter hovered above. Just yesterday, he'd picked up a soaked stranger from the roadside, thinking he was just doing the right thing. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what that small gesture would unlock. Hey everyone, welcome to Legacy Tales. Let's get started. Rain fell like sheets of glass across the Scottish Highlands, and Callum Fraser could barely see beyond the flickering wipers of his rusted pickup. He wasn't supposed to be out this late. The pub he worked at had closed early thanks to a power cut, and he was making the long, winding drive home when he spotted a figure standing alone in the downpour. No car, no shelter, just a man, soaked to the bone, his head low as if the weight of the world was resting on his shoulders. Something about him made Callum slow down. He rolled the window down halfway, shouting over the rain, "You all right, mate? Need a lift?" The man didn't even hesitate. He simply nodded and climbed in. His clothes were torn at the sleeve, his hands calloused, and despite his quietness, there was something about the way he looked out the window, like he wasn't just lost in the storm, but escaping something much worse. They didn't speak much on the way. Callum offered him a towel and some leftover chips he had in a bag. The man took them politely, then finally whispered, "I used to come through this road as a kid, before things got complicated." Callum didn't pry. Everyone carried their own stories. Some were just too heavy to speak out loud. He dropped the man near an old petrol station just before his village, watched him disappear into the fog, and thought nothing more of it. After all, people came and went all the time. What mattered was that he'd helped, even if just for one cold night. But the next morning, the world flipped upside down. Callum was making tea when the rumble of engines shook the kitchen window. He opened the door and saw them, dozens of soldiers, all in black, silently surrounding his property. One man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a military overcoat. He wasn't Scottish. His accent was sharp. American. "Mr. Fraser," he said with a nod, "we need you to come with us. Now." Callum blinked, heart pounding. "Why? What's going on?" The man gave a half smile, almost like he was trying to hold back emotion. "You gave a ride to someone last night. That wasn't just any stranger." And just like that, without another word, Callum was swept into something he couldn't understand. His home, his quiet life, the routine he'd clung to, it was gone in a matter of minutes. Who was the man he picked up? Why did soldiers care? And what did he just get himself into? They didn't even give him time to pack a bag. One of the soldiers handed Callum a black raincoat and gestured toward the SUV with tinted windows. No one spoke inside. Just the hum of the engine, the constant crackle of radios, and a thick silence that felt heavier than the storm outside. They drove far, beyond Inverness, through winding military roads Callum didn't even know existed. Every few miles, checkpoints, guards, surveillance cameras. It was like entering a hidden world built underneath the one he thought he knew. "Someone want to tell me what this is about?" Callum finally asked, his voice tight. No response. Until the American officer from earlier leaned in slightly and said, "The man you helped, he was supposed to be dead." Callum stared. "What are you talking about?" 36 hours ago, we lost him during a covert extraction. Every agency across 3 continents thought he didn't make it out. But he did. Because of you. The words made no sense. How could a soaked stranger on a quiet road be part of something global? The SUV stopped in front of what looked like an abandoned warehouse in the middle of a valley. But once inside, it was clear. This was no warehouse. Bright LED lights, rows of monitors, armed guards, and a massive digital map showing dozens of blinking red dots across the world. It looked like something out of a spy film. Before Callum could ask more, a door opened on the second floor, and footsteps echoed down the staircase. It was him, the stranger from the storm. But he looked different now. Cleaned up, standing tall, with guards flanking him like royalty. He smiled when he saw Callum. "You didn't ask who I was. You didn't need a reason to help, and that's exactly why I'm here." Callum blinked, overwhelmed. "Who are you?" The man stepped closer, extended his hand. "Colonel Michael Hart, former intelligence director for the Allied Strategic Division, or at least I used to be." Callum didn't move. "Why was everyone looking for you?" Michael's expression darkened. "Because I hold something people would kill for, and thanks to you, I'm alive to protect it." Callum's head spun. Why him? Why had fate chosen an ordinary pub worker to get tangled in something so massive? But before he could even process, Michael turned to the soldiers and gave a single nod. "Show him." They led Callum to a room behind the command center. Inside was a massive vault door, sealed by fingerprint and retina scan. When it opened, Callum stepped into a space that didn't just change his day. It rewrote his past. Photos of his late father, old pub receipts, a journal, military records. "Your father," Michael said quietly, "wasn't just a pub owner. He saved my life in 1987 during a secret operation. I made a promise to repay that debt, no matter how long it took. And then, your face showed up at the edge of that road." Callum was speechless. His dad never spoke of anything military, just told tales over pints and let the world assume he was just another local. But now, 30 years later, that debt had come full circle. Callum stood frozen, staring at the evidence of a life he never knew his father had lived. All these years, he'd thought his dad was just a humble man who ran a countryside pub and told the same 3 stories to every new guest who walked in. But here were medals, photographs in uniforms with faces Callum had only seen in history books, and letters with classified stamps. One even had the seal of the Prime Minister's office. Michael spoke softly behind him. "Your father saved the lives of 14 intelligence officers. He exposed a mole that almost collapsed our northern operations, but he chose silence over glory. He wanted a quiet life, to protect you." Callum's throat tightened. It was all too much to take in. All the years he'd felt like he wasn't living up to anything, like he was wasting his life behind the bar. Now he realized that bar was built on the silence of a man who had done more than most ever would. "Why tell me this now?" Callum asked, his voice cracking. Michael stepped forward. "Because now it's your turn to decide." He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table. Inside was a photo of Callum, helping him into the car that rainy night. Beneath it, a mission briefing. His name was on the top, typed in bold. "What is this?" "A test," Michael said. "We had been watching. Not you specifically, but the region. And when I went dark, they scrambled everything. But none of them expected you to step up like that. No questions, no hesitation. Just human instinct." Callum flipped through the file. There were international clearance forms, multiple passports under his name, bank accounts he'd never opened with figures that made his stomach flip, and a final letter written in his father's handwriting. "Son, if you're reading this, then you've stepped into the world I tried to keep you from. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe silence isn't always the answer. You've already done more than I ever asked. Whatever you choose next, do it for yourself. Not the world. Not me." Tears blurred his vision. "I don't understand," Callum whispered. "What do you want me to do?" Michael placed a black card with a gold eagle emblem into his hand. "We're rebuilding something your father believed in. And if you choose to walk away, you'll still be taken care of. But if you choose to stay, there's a jet waiting outside." Callum hesitated. For so long he'd lived in a small bubble, thinking his life was predictable, even boring. Now that bubble had shattered, and beyond it was a world that not only knew his name, but had been waiting for him. He walked out to the airstrip behind the warehouse, where the rain had finally stopped. The jet gleamed under the moonlight, its engine quietly humming. He looked back once, toward the building, toward the man who had once been a stranger, toward the secrets that had reshaped everything he knew. And then he stepped forward. Not because he understood everything, but because something inside him whispered it was time. 1 year later, the quiet village of Windmere was no longer just a dot on the map. The pub that Callum once ran alone now buzzed with quiet strength. It had become a safe house, a training ground, and a memorial to a man who had once saved the world in silence. But more than that, it had become a symbol of how kindness, even something as simple as offering a stranger a ride in the rain, could shape destinies. Callum never boasted about what he had chosen. He still poured pints for the regulars, still listened to old Mrs. Finch rant about the price of eggs. But every Thursday night, when the last customer left, he would lock the door, step into the back room, and disappear for a while. Some nights it was to decode intelligence reports. Other nights, it was to train someone else, someone the world had forgotten but who had fire in their eyes. One evening, a teenager walked in, soaked from the storm, said he was kicked out by his foster parents, said he had nowhere else to go. Callum looked at him for a long time, then slid a plate of food across the counter. "Eat first," he said. "We'll figure out the rest later." Because he remembered what it felt like to be lost, and what it meant when someone, anyone, reached out. What began with a sandwich and a smile had led to a mission, to purpose, and to a legacy far bigger than he could have imagined. And in honoring his father's silent heroism, Callum had written a new chapter, one rooted not in medals or orders, but in choice. A choice to help, a choice to believe, a choice to lead. Sometimes life tests us quietly. No loud announcements, no signs, just a rainy night, a stranger in need, and the courage to say, yes. And sometimes, that simple yes is enough to change the world. If this story moved you, then make sure to like this video and subscribe to Legacy Tales, where stories of silent heroes, hidden legacies, and life-changing moments come alive. Because you never know, your smallest kindness might just be someone's turning point.